fun. Welcome everybody, Friday afternoon, downtown Honolulu. Ted Ralston here, host on our show, Where the Road Leads, at ThinkTech Hawaii Studios. We have another violently exciting panel discussion for you here with some fantastic guests. As you know, this program is defined by the guests we bring on, and it keeps getting better all the time. And you also might know that we have discussions prior to this. We don't script this, but we have discussions exchanging ideas prior to getting going on the show, and it's just incredible what comes out on the table. And then after the show sometimes, we hang around for 15 minutes and take the next points up. So we keep notes on this show. We use one show to strategize for the next, and it's just a fantastic experience with the kind of guests we're able to bring on and the subjects we can discuss. But where the road leads, that's sort of about the intersection between technology and life as it applies here in Hawaii. And we know we have unique characteristics here, unique circumstances, and unique abilities of technology to assist and help us, or do the wrong thing too, for that matter. But we're exploring that basic technology, that intersection between technology and the quality of life. Quality is an important term there. That sort of leads to the expectations we have, which make us perform and do what we do. Expectations are the drivers to a lot of our personal involvement in these things, and it's great to be a witness or even a part of these activities where expectations are becoming more and more noble. I hate to use that word in a pejorative sense, but that's what we're talking about. Noble expectations that cause people to do things that are a little more closer to a personal responsibility. So we're talking today about the responsibility in resilience. How do we get the population to be progressively more responsible in managing its own resilience, with Hawaii as the model because of our isolation and our dependence on the global supply chain for our existence. Two guests. To my far left is Brian Sims, who is joining us from sunny, wet Miami, Florida, I might suggest. Brian is the current local regional manager for Team Rubicon, which we'll hear about some more. We had your predecessor, Terry Rivera, on here, I think once or more, and welcoming you, Brian, and looking forward to a lot more times on this show.
Thank you very much.
And then to my immediate left is my beautiful wife, Margee Ralston. And you might think this is a family business. That's exactly what it is. And in fact, regarding the business of this show, ideas out there that you in the viewing audience might have, let us know. We'd love to take ideas on, bring people in and have discussions on subjects that might be interesting to you that we haven't brought up yet. And Zuri will give us a way to connect with the show here in a moment. In any case, both Brian and Margee are both involved in the emerging awareness of resilience and the responsibility we all have as individuals and citizens to push forward in those domains. Margee's part of HHARP, almost unpronounceable, Hawaii Hazard Awareness and Resilience Program, representing Waimanalo and the subset of the Waimanalo team here. And again, Brian is our current regional leader of Team Rubicon. So we'll get into the specifics of what these two programs are all about in a minute, but let's have some basic background discussion. I'll start with you, Brian, on Team Rubicon, where it came from, where it's going, how people can get involved, things like that.
Sure. So my name is Brian Sims, and I'm with Team Rubicon. Team Rubicon unites the skills of veterans and first responders to rapidly deploy emergency response teams to disaster-affected areas. I joined Team Rubicon 3 years ago. I did it after seeing Team Rubicon on the news on CNN, a couple different disasters. And I thought it was a great way to serve my country yet again. I'm a veteran of the U.S. Army Infantry, Global War on Terrorism, and I was kind of lacking some motivation, I guess some duty. And Team Rubicon gave that back to me. Team Rubicon is an excellent model of citizens being able to come in, be trained professionally using FEMA guidelines, ICS courses.
Do you guys have Team Rubicon basic courses, or do you depend on the FEMA course structure, or how does that play out?
So we do have our own course structure. It's comprised of Team Rubicon history, safety, couple other different lessons, and then we do incorporate ICS courses like ICS 100, 200, 700, and 800. Those are our basic requirements for someone to go out on a mission. We also do require background checks if you do want to come out on a mission with us. That way we know everyone is safe. So with that basic guideline, we are creating a 23,000 members now across the United States, professional civilians, first responders, veterans, combat veterans, all types, that can respond effectively and immediately to disasters.
Is it limited to veterans, or can citizens who weren't in the military, for example, are they welcome into the Rubicon family?
Absolutely, absolutely. Civilians are welcome to join as well. As I said, first responders, hey, those are quote-unquote civilians as well. So you do not have to be military or prior military to join us.
Just have the motivation, have the will, and pass whatever physical tests are required, or
no physical test required. We are open to anyone and everyone. I mean, we have plenty of combat veterans who are missing limbs, and they have plenty of space for everyone.
Most interesting. I mean, I've been on one exercise with local Team Rubicon here, and it's what you're saying. It strikes me that you could have an entire rear area support based on people running computers and such that are connected with the actual action by the internet or by some other comm system. Mm-hmm. They're unable to actually perform because of a missing limb, for example, or their mobility, but they could perform just as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Doing analysis and such in the back area, rear area.
And we do have that. But we have guys out there that are just as physically fit despite missing a leg. They wear their prosthetic device, and we just make sure that whatever those conditions may be, as with any member, safety is number one for Team Rubicon, and we make sure that they can handle those tasks for the day, and we execute them immediately.
There's another thing you mentioned, training. Right down the street from us, within a stone's throw of this place, is another unpronounceable acronym, NDPTC, National Disaster Preparedness Training Center. We've had many of their folks on this show, tightly connected with Carl Kim, who runs the operation, and I think you may have made some connections recently with them, but if not, we will certainly make sure that happens, because they teach a lot of the FEMA-based coursework and develop coursework for FEMA, and having a relationship between an actual operating element such as Rubicon, especially the way you're constructed, would be extremely useful for NDPTC. I can guarantee it. So I think at the event the other night we maybe had some social contacts, but we need to sit down and maybe talk to them. And
I agree completely. Team Rubicon does a great job of being able to liaise with both governmental and NGO agencies, educational, so on and so forth, think tanks, analytic agencies. And we like to combine all of those together so we can strategize with them and show them where we can put our expertise in and where we can lend a hand where a lot of other people cannot.
Typically at the end of this show, we ask our guests to state to the audience what they'd like to have the audience take away with them from listening to this conversation or watching it. And so I'd like to just set that on the table before we get to that point, because I would think that Team Rubicon would have a lot of messages it wants to get out, and it would have a lot of implicit requests for new technology, new systems, and this sort of thing. So let's think about that as we go through the conversation here. Let me turn for a moment to your name again is Margee Ralston. Yeah, okay. And in Waimanalo at HHARP. So you come from a completely different perspective than what Brian comes from, and yet they're converging. Brian comes from a very organized, orderly structure, which is J structure and the FEMA training orientation. The HHARP activity is coming from a sort of a different orientation, from a more of a grassroots level of citizen in population areas, looking at after resilience in a village or a town here. And so tell us about how you got involved, Margee. And I mean, I've known you for 50 years, and this was a streak I did not know you had in you, to become involved in community resilience and ham radio and things like that. So the microphone is yours.
Okay. Well, in Waimanalo, we are in a geographically at-risk area. We're at risk for tsunami and in other natural disasters that could occur, hurricanes specifically. But and we have a good chance of being cut off from even the rest of the island, as the islands have the risk of being cut off from the rest of the world. So we're an isolated community, so to speak, in an isolated island chain. So it behooves one, if you live there, to try to prepare yourself for any thing that may come along. So the individual responsibility is where it starts. We have our community, and we have Frencha Kalilimoku, who is just a ball of energy and is driving force and organizing. And I first got involved I was at a neighborhood board meeting, and Frencha got up and started speaking about her passion for having our community ready and resilient for anything that comes along. And it really touched a chord with me, and I thought it was very important. And I'm really hoping that I can support her and everyone else in Waimanalo and on the island of Oahu and the world to try to get every single person to feel that responsibility, and if not, to step up and get as many people as possible to come on board and find a way that we can prepare ourselves for something that may happen in the future. And when one passes by and it doesn't happen, well, that's wonderful, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be ready to go.
That's a pretty incredible maturity of responsible thought here. I remember growing up as a kid, we had neighborhood groups, we had Huio Kailua, things like that took care of, in an ad hoc way, took care of issues. We really didn't have an organized approach to it. And then along the way somewhere in the 60s and such, we began expecting government to take care of us more and more. And as the population grew, we had this greater expectation of the government taking care of everything for us. Well, I think we've come to the point now where that's reversing, and we better take care of ourselves. Government can do what it can do, but we're unrealistic to expect that the government can step in, whatever that government may be, county, city, or federal or state. We have to begin becoming resilient and thinking that way ourselves, and it's incredible that has emerged. And I agree with you on Frencha Kalilimoku's motivation. We're here because of her. Frencha, we're out here. We're here, you're out there. We'll get you on the show. And this gal is, nothing escapes her witness. Nothing escapes being collected and made part of the family. But the two things are interesting here. You got the information from the Waimanalo Neighborhood Board, and you heard about Team Rubicon from CNN or some other news broadcast. So what's interesting is we don't really have a way to postulate these things going forward in some formal manner. It's sort of almost a word of mouth or word of TV that gets these stories out there and draws people in.
I think that media itself, especially social media these days, is an important and key factor in emergency and disaster management. There's a lot of programs going on out there. IAEM is having their conference soon, and there's going to be a large lecture on that. I'm looking forward to seeing some of those videos after, since I won't be attending that one, unfortunately.
IAEM, can you say what that stands for?
International Association of Emergency Managers.
And where are they having their meeting?
I believe it's in Texas. It's in Texas.
Coming up soon?
National conference. It is coming up soon. Don't remember the date, but I think IAEM.org is the website that you could go to. So social media itself is a great way for anyone, even just a regular civilian, to be able to get alerts immediately from city, county, state, federal, on any types of disasters that may be happening, as well as for us to kind of parse information from local citizens that are on the ground via pictures, tweets, Facebook, whatever that might be, and using certain technologies to parse that information itself. Then that can be added into things like Palantir, which is a great tool that we use ourselves to be able to use that information and create some layers on maps and send out teams where we need to send teams.
This takes us right into the world of technology and technology applications that can assist us. And that suggests that we have the sort of an implicit obligation to define what those requirements are, so that folks out there who write code and think of systems can help us by taking our requirements and going forward. We'll get back to that in a minute, right after we take our first break. See you in 30 or 40 seconds, folks.
Okay, this is ThinkTech Hawaii, and it's Wednesday. Every Wednesday is Energy Wednesday here in Hawaii, the state of clean energy. 4 to 5 p.m. every Wednesday. Come and listen to us. And just to show you what I mean, I'm going to ask Sharon to tell us more.
come and see us every Wednesday, as Jay said. And we have people like Jim Albers from HECO here and co-host Ray Starling here every Wednesday. We not only go on Olelo and OC16, but also stream live. So please come visit us, hear about the latest in clean energy.
Okay, Jim, you've been here. You got any comment on all this?
As important as energy is in all of our lives today, this is a great forum and a great format to vet those issues. So I encourage everybody to listen in and participate.
Okay, Ray, what do you think for a close?
Well, I think this is the greatest show in the energy world here in Hawaii. You can come here every week, 1 hour, and catch the latest on what's happening and hear from the people who really know what's going on, like Jim Alberts. We appreciate your coming today.
Thank you.
Ray Starling, Sharon Moriwaki, Jim Alberts, and Jay Fidel here in Hawaii, the state of clean energy, 4 to 5 p.m. Wednesday. Aloha.
Aloha.
The red light is on, folks. That means it's time for our second segment of Where the Road Leads on ThinkTech Hawaii from downtown Honolulu. Our guest today, Margee Ralston to my left, part of the family business, and Brian Sims, part of Team Rubicon. Team Rubicon's initials are TR, same as mine, so we look at that as part of the family also. So
Kismet.
totally a family business here, folks. We're talking about the emerging idea of citizens and communities and groups of veterans, in this case, taking on an incredible self-motivated determination to assist in resilience and assist in thriving, basically, in a way that's in parallel to, but not part of the government. It's citizen responsibility coming up. And we're talking about the expectations about why that's important. We talked about Team Rubicon forming out of retired military and responders who want to continue doing that work in a very nice way. Talking about Waimanalo on Oahu as a leader in that way of thinking. And as we left the last session, we were talking about how technology is coming into the picture. So you began going through a really vibrant discussion about the kinds of technology that are showing up on your doorstep to assist in the Team Rubicon operations. We'll ask you at the end of this session, again, what would be the best thing you could have delivered to you by the technical community to make Rubicon stand really tall and shine and do its job really well? What we're getting down to, though, is this is really sort of an intelligence function, because we've got to bring information in. I'm not talking about an NGA type function. We're talking about what's the tactical intelligence about circumstances affecting us, where they're going, what are the indications and warnings, and how do we respond to these? And in your case, you don't have a J3 to turn to or a J6 to wire things together. So you have to depend on personal equipment, which is all dissimilar, I'm guessing. And how do you put that all together into an operating system that becomes the network in which you guys are nodes? And
Well, the very first thing that we do was we do utilize Palantir as our base technology. So
can
anyone...
you describe that a little bit to the audience?
Absolutely. So anyone that may be familiar, that may be a veteran, might have used Blue Force Tracker over in theater. Very similar type of program. So what it will allow us to do is to kind of use like Google Maps. We can send out strike teams with Palantir-enabled Samsung Galaxy phones. With that phone, we can take pictures, geotag locations.
So I could take my phone right here. We could put Palantir on this, and I could be a contributor to the network of information that
Absolutely.
you're generating.
So back at the talk.
Do I get it back tomorrow, or when do I get it back?
Well, no, I like your phone. I think I'm gonna keep it.
But I have one you can do as well.
We need to bring this, if I can interject, we need to bring this into the Waimanalo
Yeah.
HARP thinking process. This would be
Yes.
tied together, Team Rubicon and Waimanalo HARP.
Mhm.
And
Absolutely. So one of the things we love to do is we do love to work with other organizations. I mean, a lot of times because of the fact that we are there early before other organizations, NGOs and governmental organizations, we're on the ground with our Palantir technology already collecting that intelligence, and we're able to disseminate that intelligence to those organizations so they can more effectively respond when they're prepping to come. So their logistics abilities are actually improved by us being there before them.
So what you're depending on is the internet or some other backbone of communication, handheld devices that collect information either through, you write them down, or you text them, or you take pictures, or maybe even make a voice recording. And then Palantir is the software that pulls that together and organizes it in some way?
That's correct.
And then does it also have its own communication system or to get to the rear area and then look at how things combine? So if you have like 2 reports of an auto accident, separating them out to not 2 separate accidents, but 2 different reports of the same accident, that sort of logic is available to you in Palantir?
Plus much more. Palantir themselves are really great. They came out during Hurricane Sandy when we deployed there. And that's kind of where it actually all started at. They came with their technology. We were actually just working off sheets of paper and iPads using Google Forms. And they came in and took their technology and modeled their technology after what we were trying to do and basically created that system right there on the spot. When we have large operations that are going down, Palantir does assist us live. They lend us some people, plus we have some great people here in Hawaii that work for Team Rubicon that are experts at Palantir, and they can basically come up with anything we need right on the spot.
So you get a common operating picture out of this, or a series of common operating pictures, depending what your particular point of view is, I suspect. Is that what Palantir generates, perhaps? Puts it on Google Earth and maps it out?
In the most simple terms, absolutely. And it becomes a very user-friendly interface in that aspect.
Can we get a demonstration of that out on Waimanalo? I think that would be fantastic to put in front of the 20 or 30 people who show up at our weekly meetings, or even the CERT team out there. I can't speak on your behalf, and I can't speak on behalf of Francia, but I think we could find a way to make that a great demonstration. And how would HARP take advantage of what you guys have already done? How would we take that Palantir framework? We have to talk to Palantir, I presume, and get some kind of relationship with them. But
There is, you can work through Palantir. There are also some web applications, web-based technology that you can use as well. They have a section called Raven, which is web-based and uses a lot of their GIS information that you could use in that aspect. Some stuff out there is even free that does some pretty high-tech parsing of data, so you can intelligence gather like that as well.
And I trust that these systems are done so well that they can be done relatively easily, because people in these community-based operations are going to come from every perspective you can imagine. They're going to be engineers, going to be lawyers, going to be teachers, going to be housewives, going to be any range, retired people, and kids. And so they all come from a different training background, different knowledge of IT systems and such, so that I presume that you've got this down to a level where it's fairly straightforward and easy to operate. We'll trust you to do that.
Well, Palantir's basic technology that is the application itself that goes on a mobile device. If you know how to use a mobile device already, then we can teach you in basically under 5 minutes how to use the application and get you out there to collect the correct intelligence.
In one of the UAVs that we are involved with here, a little quadrotor that does a lot of work. In fact, we've actually taken out one of your exercises, and we need to take it on another one. We call it cell phone simple. The thing is that simple. So basically what you're saying is that Palantir stays within that framework of being cell phone simple, if you will, or if you can operate a cell phone, you can operate that application on the cell phone. Is that a fair way to
That's
look at it?
100% correct, yes.
That's incredible. That means I can operate it. And you guys are all very young, and this is part of your life. To us, it's something we had to learn the hard way and never had any formal training in it. So we do need things that are made very simple for us so we can use them. And, in fact, if technology shows up that isn't easily usable, it won't get used. So if it can't be trained quickly and brought into your daily thinking process, it makes it very tough to use. How would you think, Margee, about how we would construct something like this? Take a Rubicon, HARP, luau or picnic or something and bring it together and have this kind of a social and resilience and technical discussion.
Well, I think the first thing that you would want to do is have it be hands-on, so that when the people came, that whatever you were doing, if you were sitting at a table or sitting around a round table, that whatever whatever you were going to produce that day would be something that they would take home with them, either with their mobile device or their cell phone or whatever it is they use. So you would say, this is what we're going to do, and clear it through, have organization, Frencha, and all the people in charge, and say, can we have a demonstration for all of Waimanalo, all the Kapuna, the kids, whoever lives there, people that are visiting, anyone that wants to show up. All you need to do is bring your device, and we have people there who will instruct us on how to download or install any of the software or apps that you would need, and then go through a few procedures or training, or just an example, or like a model disaster. Maybe it's just that we had a big storm and all the electricity went out, and one of the things fell across the road. Something simple, and just go step by
do it
step.
right there in the yard.
Right there, and do it right there at the table.
Take pictures, form the database,
Right, have the
generate the
pictures.
strike team.
And have each person participate so that they were comfortable doing it. Because if they don't ever use it and they're not comfortable with it, it's not going to happen during a disaster.
I like your point about the hands-on. That was what you said at
Yes,
the top of the
hands-on,
conversation.
yeah.
Hands-on.
They have to
And
use it.
we just went to a meeting. I came from aerospace industry. I'm quite used to spending half a day and 145 PowerPoint charts, and you're not quite sure at the end, is this thing over? Did anybody make a point here? We're quite familiar with that. And we had that experience last week in a meeting. I won't say which meeting it was, but it was kind of like that. Is there a point here? The reverse of that is to walk in, get handed this, and say, you're ready to roll.
Yeah.
We'll give you 5 minutes of training so you can not get nervous
No,
and shake
3
too much, but-
steps.
Yeah.
1,
Yeah.
2, 3.
I like that.
And you're done.
Okay. Margie's an athlete, as you know, and we haven't gone into that yet here, but that's very much like how you approach athletics. We're going to win, we're going to dominate, we're going to do it again. 3 things. So that's cool. So hands-on, a real-time operational demo in something that everybody can observe and be part of.
And participate fully in, completely.
Yeah.
They have to be able to do each step themselves personally, because then they're empowered now. They can do it. And they can take it to all the people around them, and then they can look at you and say, yeah, I'm right there, I'm on your team,
I agree completely. I do believe that, especially when it comes to community emergency response teams, that type of model, and even just basic ICS, the NIMS system, it is kind of a use it or lose it type of thing. If you're not out there and practicing it, it's very easy to forget exactly the way that command structure is kind of going, what motions you need to be going through, what that paperwork may be as paperwork gets updated, as well as things such as how do you operate a chainsaw? When's the last time you got behind that to do some debris clearing? Team Rubicon just put on a great train-the-trainer chainsaw workshop over in Southern California. We had people from all of our regions all across the United States come over. They were trained, and now they're taking that training out to our members in those regions to train them as well.
So part of the resilience is this ongoing interactivity with the people, the systems, equipment, which is called training. In fact, training is the 24/7 operation. And if we could find ways that these things that are created, such as Palantir, become part of the non-emergency operations, just the basic management of the city or something, then when it comes time for a real emergency, it's the same system, same relationship, same way of operating. It's just that the pace is quicker in the case of an emergency. That's a fascinating thought. And in fact, the more we can make these elements of technology, I'm repeating myself here, but I'm saying it, see if you guys agree, the more we can make these things standard operating procedure, just part of our daily life, the closer we're going to be to their good utility in time of need.
I want to point something out. We're talking a lot of high tech, but there's a lot of low tech stuff that needs to always be addressed in emergency management. Things such as preparing for your water going out. So I've got plenty of cases of water. I'm pre-staging myself of water. I have some type of go bag. I have cans of food. If I have a chainsaw and that's what I'm going to be using, and I'm the type of person that is going to be doing debris clearance with that team, I need to make sure that I've done some maintenance and checks on that. It's oiled up. I have extra gasoline, things like that. Those low-tech things are the things that are going to, they're going to prepare you to be able to get into the high-tech stuff and let the people that need to do the high-tech stuff do their job so you can assist them and we can solve whatever that situation may be.
We're getting closer and closer to coming up with the wish list that, that we're each going to be talking about to the audience here as we close this program in the next, at the end of the next segment. Let's come back to that, and then we'll go through one more sub-element of discussion here about how we would construct an event of some kind where we give people hands-on experience, and then turn that into our wish list as to what we want to have in the future. I think you've already said yours, but so in fact, what that means is we'll give you a chance to say a second one. Okay. The first one, I'm putting your words in your mouth. I've never done that before in my life, but to have an exercise that combines what we're doing here, so you can get that thinking going, and then there's got to be something beyond that. But we'll get back to that in a minute, folks, after we take a next break.
Hi, I'm your host on ThinkTech Asia, Bill Sharp. I look forward to you joining us each Monday between 4 and 5 o'clock when we film right here in our studio in downtown Honolulu. The show, ThinkTech Asia, focuses on contemporary events in Asia. And by Asia, we mean anything from Hawaii, south to Australia and New Zealand, west to Pakistan, and as far north as the Russian Far East. Clearly, this is one of the most economically dynamic centers of the world, and we bring you up to date on what's going on in a whole host of countries in this very vital region. We look forward to seeing you. Aloha.
Welcome, everyone, to the last segment of our show, Where the Road Leads, at ThinkTech Hawaii Studios, downtown Honolulu, on Friday. Ted Ralston, your host here. Our guests are Margee Ralston, part of the family, and Brian Sims, Team Rubicon, part of the family. And we've just had an incredible discussion about how the technology and the systems that you've generated in Team Rubicon could have an application in the community domains here, which aren't quite as formally structured as Team Rubicon. I want to get back to that in a minute. I was talking to Doug Main at the event we had this week, which I haven't even talked about yet. Doug Main runs Department of Emergency Management here for the state. And we were talking about the history and the origin of how HHARP came into being. It started with the tsunami readiness in Kailua, and moved out from beyond tsunami to other all hazards type thinking. So it's just an emerging concept at this point in time. And what's fascinating is that coming from the citizens themselves, the population, is this desire to be ready for these complex events. And so something like HHARP is a grassroots effort with a government stimulus helping it move forward. But the kind of stimulus you can bring to it is from a strike team-based operational framework with intelligence driving it, which is an incredible collection of the several principal functions needed to make an operation effective. And we're not used to that in the civil side of the house. That's not something we're normally used to. Someone else does it for us, but we're moving in that direction. So I just see a fascinating collection there. And I had a bright idea during our break that I was thinking of, and when I was younger, I could probably retain that bright idea and bring it up here, but those days are gone, so we're gonna go without it right now. Anyway, Margee, in this potential activity we're talking about here, once again, let's talk about what we're saying, because it's such a novel idea. It's actually such a straightforward idea, but no one's ever thought of it, I don't think. How do we take Team Rubicon, and there may be some other Doctors Without Borders, there may be other NGOs out there and this sort of thing that we can add to this mix and do this community awareness. It's more than different than the get ready, name your town we've done here, Kailua, Manoa, and Eva and such. It's a little bit different than that. It's more of an operational exercise, leading us to, as you said, hands-on these things, as opposed to depending on someone else to bring them in. So that's a fascinating thought to me. If I can just for a moment, and I realize I'm talking a lot here, but we had another exercise this week that you were part of and I was part of in the middle of the week, where we took this basic same concept of resilience and readiness and responsibility and took it to the kind of the global level. We had Pacific Command, we had every element of the military and the non-government elements present and discussed how we actually would do something like that. We had a person playing the role of a prime minister. We had people playing the roles of the U.S. ambassador and USAID and such. And I think a lot of learning is going to be coming out of that at the large level. be interesting to tie together that concept of Pacific-wide resilience that we spoke of, which is a really complicated problem. But there's a framework there that fits the small scale, and there's a small scale framework that probably fits the big scale. So maybe at the next time we have one of those tabletop exercises, we could have had this field exercise beforehand and have actually walked the talk as opposed to just talk the talk. I get suspicious of tabletop exercises, as I'm sure you, okay? Because we sit in a conference room and we sit in our nice clothes and all, and in real life is mud, real life is rain, real life is my favorite, DIL, disconnected, intermittent, and limited communication. And I just had an experience this week. I had a problem with this thing, had to go back and get it, have the guy at the store do something with it. He basically reset it back to all the factory settings. Well, that means everything I was counting on has been destroyed, and I have to now rebuild it. Disconnected, intermittent, and limited communication, same thing. When you reconnect a system into a network, does it reboot and start all over again? Does it reset the geoposition to where you are as opposed to what you're talking about? All these issues are interesting, complicated technical issues that influence how different systems come together to perform a mission. And I think that what we're speaking of here is something interesting. Start at a level we can manage and control, at a scale we can understand, to learn what these interface issues are, and then let that be a learning point to grow into a larger scale, as opposed to just starting at the high level scale and try to work down.
I agree. I think that's a great idea. I think that hybrid is probably the best way to go. And I just want to point out that the one thing that tabletop exercises and any type of training just cannot simulate is what we're really up against, and that is there's people's lives on the line. And that's what we're in the business to do. We're in the business to save people's lives.
That is fascinating. And we've got a gentleman here in the audience who is interested in another component of that, and we'll do some work independent of this particular episode here. But that's the use of one example of technology, unmanned air vehicles, in that exact issue of going forward. We think of unmanned air vehicles, UAVs, UASs, call it what you will, from the military perspective often, which is what we see in the paper, big, large systems that basically are weapons that just don't have a pilot in them. But we're talking here about technology at a much smaller scale. Robotics in various forms basically exist to put the sensors forward where they need to be without putting a person forward where the risk is. And we benefit both the responder and don't turn them into a victim by not putting them out there where the risk is. And we improve the role or the potential of the victim by getting information faster and better. So I'm thinking that in this exercise we put together, I'd like to bring the UAV into it and have that as another component, just as a test. How are we actually going to use something like this in real life? We had an experience a couple, 3 months ago. Took one of the small UAVs with infrared sensor on it up to the mountains where a fire was burning in Makakilo down here. And as it turns out, even though we had technology that could be used, if the system in which we're embedding it, which is the fire operations, isn't used to that, hasn't got training, hasn't got a way to induct it, it becomes it's not as effective as it would be if you had it fully integrated as a way to bring information into the picture. So once again, these exercises we're talking about can expose those issues where a bright idea may be good, but it won't work if you don't have it integrated. So we can, little exercises, little field exercises are probably where you figure that out, much more so than the tabletop, where that you go through at the philosophical level.
I agree completely. And in the
Can
military,
you disagree with something? Can we have some disagreement here? You know, this show is all about ratings. Ratings come from controversy.
We have to have a
We
big
need
fight.
disconnect. We need fist fights at the table here that don't generate ratings. You can't agree to everything. You got to take some exception to what we're saying here, Brian.
well, I have to agree with you on that point.
Okay.
And I want to say the example of, the military does field operations and exercises all the time. Why? Because the more training exposes the flaws. Especially in our field where technology is advancing so quickly, it gives us the ability to be adaptable. In the military, adaptability is key to being able to win the fight, and that is definitely the key in emergency and disaster response as well. If you're not adaptable to a situation, there's just nowhere you can go within disaster management. That's why NIMS was created. The ICS training is what it is, and the National Response Framework was developed. Too many other agencies wanted their own section, wanted to do it their way, and then when everyone got together, no one spoke the same language, so nothing was getting done properly.
You know, that brings up a thought then. I think we may have identified a subject for discussion at this table, and that is NIMS and ICS. And for those who are not familiar with the acronym, military background acronyms are rich, but NIMS is the National Incident Management System, and ICS is the Incident Command System. And I think that's a really good point, because it's so important to realize that everything we do has to become recognized and approved by the incident commander, whoever that might be. You can't run off and do things that are ad hoc. There is a structure to this, but the structure is flexible and adaptable, and even has some time phasing to it in terms of, you know, as the event builds up versus as the event comes down. So I think that's a great discussion. Can you lead that for us here at this table, or can we get a few other people who are ICS gifted?
I would love to be here for that.
Let's do that. And then how much, we can get Jay Fidel in, he can become our, he can become the victim, and we'll lay him right here on the floor.
Casualty lane.
Right here on the table. And yeah, okay, our casualty. Great. So what we again like to close these episodes off with is a thought to the audience about what the next step might be, what your desires would be if you ran the world in the areas we've discussed here tonight. And don't feel any pressure. And there's no quiz at the end. So there's no right and no wrong to this. I will say that I keep notes on these shows, and we have a whole pack of them, and it's fascinating to look back at the expectations or the desires people would have. Terry Rivera, who was your predecessor in Team Rubicon, when he sat here, asked him that question. And his very impassioned response was, we've got to make these things whole of community. We've got to have a solution that's whole of community and that is understood and is participated in and is part of the community. That's how Terry felt about it. And I thought that was kind of an interesting perspective from his view from NYPD, 9/11 and things like that. Sitting at the same table with Terry was Owen Shea from NDPTC. He's a PhD scientist in the subjects we're dealing with. And his idea, his expectation, his desire was that all the research going on, R&D and such, should have a practical application coming out the end of it. And it should be tied to, in this case, ICS or NIMS or the intelligence discovery, something like that, or triage management. There needs to be some better tie between the R&D and the applications. And once again, these the field exercises we're speaking of can be a conduit that connects the R&D people into the operational community. Anyway, my own personal expectation is that we have more of these wonderfully violent discussions about how this future should look. And to me, I just wish we had a way to reach out and communicate things like Team Rubicon, like HARP, to the audience. And I offer this program as once a week, that opportunity. And we can continue bringing in, as we have in the past, issues of emerging situations like Bahua lava, or the training we're speaking of, or the table of the community exercises. So my wish is that we had people taking careful attention to this and thinking of their own responsibility in developing resilience, because it's important to the life of the land here. That's my view and expectation. Margee?
Well, let's see. First of all, one of the expectations I have is that whatever we develop and whatever comes from the different operational activities that are done with the people who are doing them is that it is very simple, and that everyone involved will be able to participate in it in some way. In other words, they'll be able to be part of the communication, so no one is isolated. And it's the same thing you were just saying about having the whole community involved. And the other thing is in Waimanalo, we've elected to use ham radios for a number of reasons. One reason is that expense is an issue in Waimanalo, that a lot of the really beautiful and fantastic and awesome high-tech stuff is out of range financially for many of the people there. And so ham radio also is something that you're going to be able to use if your cell towers are all down. So that's one of the reasons that it was selected. And so all the technology is really awesome and it's really great, but there is also the possibility that it may not actually be working for a little while. So to me, whatever you do and whatever we prepare for, we have to have that as part of the scenario. Yes, it's wonderful, and there's some really awesome platforms and things and software out there, and I would love to be conversant in all of them, but there's also the fact that maybe for the first 12 hours or 2 weeks, we don't know which it might be, none of it may be available. So what are we going to do, and how are we going to communicate, and how are all these people that live in this close area, how are we going to be ready to do whatever it is we need to do whatever happens? So to me, the exercise and the activities should start with the simple and move forward from there. So that's that. I would like Waimanalo to have its own ham radio club. Okay, that's
Okay, so I need to interpret what you said. I think that you said some fantastic things here. First of all, earlier on you said we've got to be hands-on. We've got to be hands-on, and no more than 5 minutes training or awareness, no manual to read, no read-me to get into. The system has to be evident. Secondly, I cooked up a term for what you said. It has to be inclusive by design. That is, the notion of technology can't be just this group over here or just that group here. It's got to be something that everybody recognizes the value of. And then in the specific issue, the use of ham radio is a fascinating idea, and we should tie that in with, again, Team Rubicon. Are you guys using ham radio, or how do you relate to that?
We do have volunteers that operate ham radio. We have volunteers that are we are such a diverse population, which is what makes Team Rubicon so unique. Team Rubicon has volunteers that are active in all types of technology, are experts in all different types of fields, have had experience in so many different types of disasters. That lends to a pool of information that allows us to give that information to smaller CERT teams, community-based operations, or wherever it is that we may be, so we can add those skills to whatever that operation may be.
You said so much, I can't even summarize it in my note form here. Can you try to encapsulate your thoughts to what you'd like to have the audience take away as maybe the most important piece that they should think about in regard to where we're going here together?
First thing, I'd like to say thank you very much for inviting me on the show, Ted. I had a great time. Second, if you do want to find out more information about Team Rubicon, it's www.teamrubiconusa.org. You can find out on social media. We're all over the place. We're very active there. So talking about bringing all that together, I think that if we could create some type of hybrid tabletop disaster lane exercise where we're actually excluding military and governmental organizations, where it's really more of the NGOs and community-based organizations, which are going to be a lot of the first responders on the ground right there, and how we can incorporate our skills together, I think that that would be more conducive to moving on to higher level operations where we do include maybe the civil defense, even into PACCOM and things like that locally here in Hawaii.
That's fantastic. So we can tie those together offline here because we're about ready to lose our time on the air and develop this, and we'll bring it back in at some future, maybe within a month or so, and bring that idea forward here. Plus, we're going to count on you, expectations, for the an experiment on NIMS and on ICS so that everybody can understand what that's all about. So this is the show that we can use to get this information out. One of the avenues of getting it out there. Team Rubicon, Brian Sims, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
And Margee, thank you so
Aloha.
much. Aloha. Okay, folks. Ted Ralston thanking our guests very much, thanking you for being our audience. We'll see you again next Friday. Actually, Margee and I will be doing the next 2 shows from the road, from Tucson, Arizona, and then from San Francisco by Skype. And we'll have folks on here that are able to carry the next step forward. Thank you very much.